Now we're being joined live by Arise News analyst Dr. Constance Ikoku for a review of the newspaper headlines. Thank you for joining us live.
Good morning, Benga.
Good morning, Dr. Constance. Always looking bright. Anyway, it's a
Thank
Monday
you.
morning.
Yes, it
You're
is a
leading the
Monday
way.
morning, yes. How was your weekend?
Well, cool.
Okay.
It's a blue day.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning, Dr. Constance. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too. Did it go well during the weekend? Or?
Oh, absolutely. It was a good one.
Okay.
And your own?
Yeah, I was well rested. It
No
was
hangovers?
Well. No. No. Do I look like a hangover this morning? Look at my face. I look refreshed, don't I?
Absolutely.
All right. Hello then. Welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. In these days, Soludo in Landslide secured second-term victory, reinforces power of incumbency. Plot to take over Nest Oil Nekonde's interest in OML 42 unravels, and PDP leadership tussle. INEC backs Damago. Nigeria IMF discuss economic reforms growth plans for 2026 to 2030. Moving on to New Telegraph newspaper. Soludo re-elected Anambra governor with 422,664 votes, INEC declares. NSCIA fought targeted killing claim, says its agenda to destabilize Nigeria. NASU to FG, respect pact, stop threatening us with no work, no pay. The Punch newspaper, PDP crisis, 3,000 delegates set for high-stakes convention. Crude oil revenue plunges by 43%. Drugs, Regina Nwoko in fresh bitter showdown. And Soludo's Anambra's win sparks political storm. FG vows tighter security after UK flags northern states as unsafe. And Aregbesol's backing can't save Adeleke, according to APC chieftain. Daily Trust, genocide claim, FG is silent on Amopitan's legal brief. Anambra LP ADC candidates reject result as Soludo re-elected. Trump threats, stock market loss hit 2.8 trillion naira, and protests in Kogi community over bandits attack. Daily Sun, house rent hike agony spreads, and Dangote fuel depots in fresh price battle for market control. Nigeria not ripe for 15% tariff on fuel imports, according to S&P Global. And of course, going to Anambra as well, as congratulates Soludo. How 140 billion naira ongoing capital projects are shaping Zamfara, according to official. And Saudi-bound wanted drug lord arrested as NDLEA raids Kolos lab in Lagos. Daily Independent, sky-high fares in Nigeria blamed on expanding web of FG levies. Anambra Gubapo, we've already seen that. Soludo has been re-elected. And NSIA urges Christians to reject external efforts to destabilize Nigeria. Leadership newspaper, groups kick as Islamic Council says no Christian genocide in Nigeria. We have award affirms our outstanding governor's strides, according to Governor Sani. He was receiving that award. Group raises the alarm over fresh attacks in southern Kaduna. The Guardian newspaper, again on Soludo, triumphs, in Anambra's ADC and others decry vote buying. We also have there Anambra Serap Booth Party urge INEC to prosecute vote buyers. Vanguard newspaper, again on Anambra State. Then FG exceeds 2025 borrowing target by 55.6%. UK warns against travel to 6 states in Nigeria. We also have that story on Nest Oil, plot to take over Nest Oil and Nekonde's interest in OML 42 unravels. Moving on to the international headlines, Daily Graphic will deepen press freedom. This is here in Ghana, according to the President Mahama. The Standard, Trinity of Terror, You have there the faces of the Tanzanian president, Uganda and Kenya as well. We'll be seeing that in detail later. To the I newspaper, BBC bosses quit over botched Trump fame as enemies gather. If we move to The Guardian, we also have that BBC story. Director General Tim Davie had to step down over panorama row. Zelensky, I am not afraid of Donald Trump. Then Abuja Inquirer, actually this is a local paper, Abuja Inquirer, how FG ignored UK Parliament's genocide warning, and dark streets, Abuja residents lament finger vandalism. The Times newspaper, BBC boss Davie resigns over allegations of bias. And finally, Financial Times, that BBC story is there. And then US consultants tap debt market and slash chiefs pay as shutdown costs bite. All right, let's return to this day newspaper. The lead story there on Anambra, the off-cycle election that everyone was watching, and Professor Joash Amopita's first assignment as INEC boss. We all saw the results yesterday. So Soludo in landslide secures second-term victory, reinforces power of incumbency. Ghana's 422,664 votes. APC's Nicholas Ukochukwu had 99,445 votes. And Tinubu congratulates him. NGE Abiodun Ngige greet task winner. ADC dismisses exercise as cash and carry democracy once of 2027 danger. Yolanda, what a landslide this was. The margin of victory for APGA was wide. So Governor Soludo clearly has a mandate here to move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, first of all, congratulations to the governor. I believe that in one of the reports that we took as well, President Bola Tinubu actually congratulated him and, you know, encouraged him on collaboration with this now his new re-election. And, you know, it's impressive to hear that that really is a landslide, 72.4%, according to the numbers that we took earlier. That is what he won by. And as well, he praised INEC and the security agencies for their work during the election day on Saturday. I believe last week as well, we were speaking with the Director of Voter Education and Publicity on what we were to expect. And it's very good to see that a lot of what she spoke about, if I can include Benga, a lot of what she spoke about actually came to fruition.
You know, she was talking about the
the
three-cycle test and the performance of the beavers and the IREF. And also it talked about the efficiency, the impartiality and the integrity test. And it was very, it's quite interesting and inspiring to see what we will call a major improvement in Nigeria's electioneering process.
Yes, exactly.
Even though we have some pitfalls like the death of the councillor that the councillor that was killed, and also report allegation of vote buying, which Serap said that they should investigate. So apart from that, we saw a major improvement. The victory was from 46% that so Governor Soludo recorded. He now has over 70%. And also we look at the conduct in general. The voter turnout is also something that we need to watch out for. It's 17%, even though a major improvement from the last election that was 10%.
So when we let me come in here. So this story, this particular piece talks about the incumbency factor and how that shapes elections in Nigeria. Obviously, this is a sitting governor. It is a factor in elections, although not all sitting governors or presidents have won re-election based on that. At the same time, it is something to be looked at. It does give the sitting executive the advantage, if you will use that word. It gives them the advantage. It also gives them the edge in an election. So APGA, anyway, is also the leading party in this particular state, no doubt. A quick comment on that.
Yeah, we've seen APGA shown that resilience, that Anambra is a stronghold. But when it comes to the national, now we see a kind of alliance, and that is what worries one. What happens to the issue of political ideology? We've seen the president congratulating, but what does this mean for Anambra people? That trend of you must ally align with the federal for you to address or for you to meet the mandate of your people is still a bit worrisome, because there is a very thin line when you look at it between a drift to one-party state. So when you look at all these indices, it's a bit worrisome, and they need to address the issue of vote buying, because in a population of about 7 million people, you have 2.8 million registered voters, and you now have just a paltry 500, just merely above 500,000 above voter turnout, which is about 17%. It's a bit worrisome. But now you've seen the peace accord in play. Even the first runner-up, Nicholas Ukachukwu, said he would need to get a proper briefing from his party agent, which means that for now there isn't any sufficient reason to contest the integrity of the election. And also for
actually, Wenga, that's the contrary, because I listened to his press conference after that election. He was saying that they are not fully satisfied or happy with what went on. He did mention the alleged vote buying. He did say that he would then have to consult with his party before they decide the next steps to be taken. So that indicates that probably they have not fully accepted the results of the election. At the same time, he congratulated the governor. But one striking thing to me in this whole exercise was the PDP. When you look at the results, the PDP came sixth, garnering over just 1,000 votes for the candidate. It is shocking, you know, how the PDP has fallen. Ogbenga, you know, this is true. You know, PDP used to be a very popular party in the Southeast region, and in fact was a mainstream party, the party to beat. In this particular election, they didn't even come third. They came sixth with just over 1,000 votes. So that shows you that whatever crisis that the party is going through nationally also extends to the state level
when
and the local council.
No longer holds.
Yes, and it just has completely collapsed the party. It's unbelievable.
100%,
well, we'll see whether at the national they are able to hold on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, the second story in this day newspaper, we have PDP leadership. We just mentioned the PDP. PDP leadership tussle. INEC backs Damagu. The Independent National Electoral Commission, in a formal communication, recognized the Ilia Damagu-led National Working Committee and deployed PDP election monitors for the governorship primaries that took place in Ado-Ekiti. Sunday, a faction of the party had postponed the primary. This was a faction led by Mohammed Abdul Rahman and the National Secretary Samuel Anyanwu. This correspondence between the Damagu-led NWC and INEC essentially seals the fate of the Abdurrahman faction. It just means that whatever they've done is viewed as illegal. So, I mean, in a sense, society, this should be the cue for this faction to back down. But my sense is that they'll, probably continue with a parallel NWC using court orders and counter court orders to achieve their aim.
Yes, absolutely. Apart from the conflicting court judgment between the Justice Omotosho of the Federal High Court and the Justice Akintola of the Oyo High Court, we have seen a situation. The party is locked in a very dangerous precedent, and I think INEC needs to be very careful, because the essence of internal democracy is to minimize interference now. So at this early level, INEC is taking a stand. I think they would need to be very sure, sure of the fact that they are taking side with that part that is legally backed
by
the court of law.
That's not exactly what happened. What happened here is that the Damagu faction, Elia Damagu officially is the acting national chairman of the party, right? So he wrote he wrote to INEC concerning this election in Ado-Ekiti, and of course INEC will respond to them, because that is the recognized national chairman. That's national chairman as up until now. Whatever that happened at the PDP secretariat last week is very new. So I don't think it's a matter of INEC siding with one particular faction or the other. This is the NWC that has been corresponding with the INEC body as the recognized NWC of the party. So, I mean, we'll see how this unfolds. But I think that INEC is also being thrown in a very difficult situation. It has also told parties that it has nothing to do with the internal workings of any party. Every party should be able to manage their internal affairs before coming to the Independent National Electoral Commission. So I don't think the problem here is that of INEC, actually. Okay, let's see another story. Let's go to Daily Trust newspaper. Genocide claim, FG is silent on Amopitan's legal brief. This was a legal brief written by the current INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amopitan, back in 2020, where he described attacks by Boko Haram as part of a systematic organized campaign that required international intervention. In the publication titled Nigeria's Silent Slaughter, Genocide in Nigeria and Implications for the International Community, the report chronicled killings of Christians in Nigeria and also accused the federal government of complicity by failing to protect affected communities. This has prompted a call by the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria, for Professor Amopitan to be removed from office. Again, Yolanda, this shows how this discourse is not new at all in Nigeria. It's been going on. The current designation of Nigeria is just something that came to a head. But communities have been in the past talking about the constant assault on villages across Nigeria, especially in the north, and the fact that the federal government seemed to be helpless and unable to help them. And in some cases, people also believe that the federal government was complicit because of the way that it had handled the whole matter. Now, Amopitan, who is the new INEC chairman, seems to be caught in the middle because of what happened in the past.
I think what we have been seeing and what we'll continue to see for a while is how the FG has been silent on this issue, strategically silent. But the question is, are they silent because they are calculating their response or because they don't know how to respond? Because this truly is a very, very sensitive issue. We've been talking about it for the past couple of days now. I believe it's going into weeks, discussing this, from the CPC designation to the rising numbers of deaths in various states due to all of this insurgency and all these terrorist attacks. So to have something spring up like this, such a report from 5 years ago, it must be a very jarring thing for the FG as well. But I think what the people need now is to hear from the federal government, to get an actual response, because this silence is weakening the image of the nation. It's weakening Nigeria's response in the broader picture of things. It was also said in part of the report that even Amopitan has not responded since this has come to light. So we just wait and see what happens, but hopefully the federal government will break their silence and address its people on what is actually going on and the plans to move forward from this.
We'll be waiting for that. Moving on to Daily Sun newspaper, house rent hike agony spreads. 90% hike reported in Lagos, Enugu, others. According to this report, what was once a routine housing payment has turned to a national crisis, with rent increasing ranging from 50 to 90% across major cities, forcing many families to either relocate, downgrade, or default on payments. And it said that both commercial and residential rents have gone through the roof. I mean, Benga, we're all here in Abuja. It's not only Lagos, Enugu. There's also Abuja. I did a special report last week on that particular issue, on how people are really facing tough times and crisis because of how house rents have become very expensive and no longer affordable for many.
Yeah, on the contrary, it's a city that is supposed to be a lovely place to behold, to live in, has become so nightmarish and neck-cutting due to the high cost of house rent. I grew up in Festac Town, and it gives me a very lovely reminder, if I must say, of the mixture of the rich, the middle class, and the poor, because of the mass low-cost housing estate that was very, very affordable, and they were built by Governor Lateef Jakonde during that time. So what happens to this? We're claiming that the middle class has been eroded. It's not only because of the the macroeconomic structure, but because the economic structure itself had phased away, because most of the houses they are building are not even affordable. When you go to different parts of the world, you have access to mortgage facility on a house that you can afford. So I think the federal government needs to invest massively on low-cost housing asset where people could, where civil servants could afford to live responsibly. So I think it's very worrisome, because now the way it's going now, because you can't also blame the landlords. They have invested so much, and if you cannot recoup your houses, your investment within 10 years, it leaves a kind of worry. So,
okay, so when that's
I'm not defending I'm not defending the landlord, but I'm saying that the federal government should make a strong intervention so that the cost of building materials could be lessened. So, and if we have the cost of building material lessened, it would benefit the general masses.
Okay. So from research and that special report that we did last week,
yes,
what we found that the factors that are driving this high cost of rent is, number one, the cost of building materials. Then number two, the involvement and role of people that are called agents, people that actually go around to get you the homes. And number three is the excessive gains that landlords or property managers want to make, from tenants. So it's not an issue of just building mass housing. The cost of everything, the materials are through the roof. But there's also the factor that there's very little regulation. Yes, it is a free market, but there's very little regulation.
Little to none.
In a market where someone can have a rent cost for let's say $10 today, and the next day or the next year is 150% increase, and it just does not make sense. So people are saying that definitely in this instance, apart from the high cost of food, the high cost of transport, and now the high cost of rent, the government really needs to do something about, rent.
Dr. Constance, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that remark. Totally and completely. It's the regulation that needs to be put in place. We can all sit and complain about how expensive and exorbitant things are, how the building materials are, all of that, and those are all valid points. But we should look at more of the regulation of how the rents are paid. At least they should be standard. For 1 bedroom, you get this, for 2, and so on and so forth. So yes, very much nail on the head.
Or you regulate how much increase has to go on. So for instance,
absolutely,
you're paying 2 million this year, next year they tell you to bring 5 million, and it's like
ridiculous.
Local papers, let's just quickly see Daily Independent. Sky high fares in Nigeria blamed on expanding web of FG levies. This report is highlighting all the government levies, taxes and charges that is making tickets expensive. We can discuss that in the interest of time, but let's quickly go to the international headlines. Here we have the Standard newspaper, Kenya, with a bold title, The Trinity of Terror. This is in reference to the recent pre- and post-election violence in Tanzania, which was quelled by what was described as excessive force by the government. So over 200 people in that country have already been charged for treason just for protesting. And then in Kenya, you have President William Ruto, who has also faced a number of protests and has handled it in a very volatile manner, with some protesters killed by the police. And then you go to Uganda, where Yoweri Museveni has been in power for more than 30 years, since 1986. So he was reported to have admitted to torturing some Kenyans who are in custody in that country. I mean, just a lot going on in those 3 countries, and people conclude that what they're seeing is in East Africa is the beginning of what looks like a 1930s. And then the Sun newspaper, Director General steps down, Big Boss quits over Trump lies. Tim Davie was forced to quit over deceptive editing of a Donald Trump speech. This uproar has been bubbling for a while now. Now it has claimed quite a few people. That's Davie and also Deborah Turness, who is the chief executive of BBC News. Yolanda.
Oh, it's really terrible what has been happening at the BBC. I think this is a story that sparked a lot of outrage when it came out last week. And even Trump is speaking up against it, saying that, oh, the deceptive editing of his very perfect speech.
He is lapping it up.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Trump would definitely lap it up. But it's very good to see some accountability from the BBC, because their reputation has suffered a sledgehammer type of, you know, incineration, a mixture of things with this. And it's good to see that, you know, they're stepping down, they're taking accountability for where they have gone wrong. But now can people continue to put their trust in such media outlets when they show time and time again that they can be faulty, especially with sensitive information? I think that's a very good question to ask.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the issue was that of editing. Yes. When you edit in a mischievous way, they are being accused of editing in a mischievous way in order to share a particular narrative for the viewers, you know. So it also calls about accountability in the media. The media can also be faulty in the way that they try to drive a particular narrative for viewers. All right, any thought on Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania?
Kenya, we are waiting to see what happens. Uganda has its upcoming elections, January 15th, and everybody's eyes are there because Yoweri Museveni has been there for the longest time. Why I say eyes are on Kenya is because there have been ongoing protests from last year, I believe, these Gen Z protests about the cost of living rising, about the increased taxes, and the worst part about it all is the loss of lives that was suffered during all these protests. Same thing in Tanzania, so many protests amid this new president. She was still sworn in besides all that has been going on.
In a private ceremony?
Yes, absolutely.
With over 90% of the votes won?
It's very, very unfortunate. And as well, don't forget, you know, the imprisonment of the opposition and accusations of terrorism. You know, so it's a really big running story for the region, and hopefully these East African big dogs can really just come out of this and restore what we know East Africa to be.
All right, those were your headlines for today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Constance, for that.